I tell you what, he does a very, very difficult thing, and I appreciate him. I appreciate his boldness, but he travels around and tries to overcome this whole idea of evolution and stuff that's trying to overcome this world, and many other things. But for somebody that has a courage like him, and Brian, sorry, I know you're humbled as well, but I do appreciate your boldness for spreading the gospel, and I don't know, if you might talk to him as well, and even go online. You can watch his debates that he takes on all these evolutionists and stuff. He goes into liberal universities and sits with probably a fairly hostile crowd half the time, and is able to debate evolutionists and trying to let the whole world know that there is a God that certainly did create us. And that's what he's going to talk about today, is this whole idea of reproduction. So I've never heard this one before, so I'm looking forward to it. So I hope you guys are as well. So Brian, would you come up and share this with us? Thanks.
You bet. Thank you. Well, I've got a little cold here, so I need to apologize for my terrible sounding voice here this morning. But we are going to talk about something that you probably don't get to hear a whole lot about in churches. My wife asked me here a couple weeks ago what I was going to speak on, and I just told her uteruses. And she said, what? And I said, yeah, uteruses. We're going to talk about the process of birth this morning. This is the one that we're going to start with. This is when I was a little boy, but not much has changed. Anyway, a lot of different health warnings. This is one that came across my desk here a long time ago. Maybe some of you have seen this before. It's a health warning not to swallow bubble gum. And I figured, as long as we're being inappropriate this morning and talking about uteruses, I might as well throw that in too. Actually, on this next slide, you do see, though, there is a health warning that we're giving you here today. And that health warning is this, is that many people do not understand that in our society, that in the womb, that is a child that is loved by God, a child that is in need of a Savior, ultimately, that Jesus is for everybody. And today we're killing children, and this isn't a pro-life message this morning, but it does tie into that. We're killing our children because we don't understand the value and the sanctity of life. And so there is a health warning, and I want to talk about the process of birth this morning, not only so that you can know that all the women that we have here that are pregnant this morning, as well as just you yourselves, were created for a purpose, and it's not an accident that you are here. You see, the Bible tells us in Psalm 139, "For you created my inmost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb." I love that verse, and we hear that verse all the time talking about being knit together. But what's neat about that is that there is a very literal truth to that. Do you know that our skin is made of collagen fibers? And those collagen fibers are actually even stronger than steel. Yet, even though they're stronger than steel, yet steel is more elastic than our skin is. And you say, well, that can't be because my skin stretches. Well, it's very real because the very literal knitting pattern that God has placed in us, in the womb, those collagen fibers are knit together, not only in each little, almost like a fiber optic thing, but because of that, it allows that something that is not even as elastic as steel to stretch. Now, is that an accident that something like that could happen? Not a chance. This is God's design that we're seeing very clearly. Now, in the process of birth, when we are knitted together in our mother's womb, there are so many things that have to be just right in order for this whole process to take place. You know, we talk about the miracle of birth, and sometimes I think that we think it's just because, wow, isn't that amazing? I've got a child. But there are so many miracles that go on in the process of birth that I don't even think we realize it. And we're just going to scratch the surface of them this morning. The first thing that you can see here is a big picture of a uterus. Like I said, probably not something that you're used to seeing in church, but bottom line is on each side of that uterus, we've got these oviducts that go down. Underneath those oviducts, those little gray little balls, are the ovaries. Those ovaries are neat because every 28 days, that ovary is going to release eggs. Now, if one ovary is injured for some reason, the other ovary, for whatever reason, just knows something was wrong, and it will start releasing the eggs. So 1 month, one ovary releases an egg, the next month, the other one. And they go back and forth. Unless there's an injury, then the one takes over every month. Again, that's pretty impressive. Now, there's even a little catcher's glove there, that little thing that looks like it's about to come over top of that ovary. When that egg is released, there's no watch in there, but by some chance it knows when that is about to be released, and that catcher's glove comes over top of the ovary and catches very softly those eggs that are released. They're not connected. It literally catches those eggs before they will go up into those oviducts. Great timing. A baby girl, when she is born, do you know that a baby girl already has about 400,000 eggs inside of her? Yeah, already that baby has 400,000 eggs. What that means is when we kill our children in abortions today, you're not just killing that child, but you're killing a possibility of 400 other thousand children. Whole generations are being destroyed in abortions today. If that egg is not fertilized, the body is it has to get rid of these things, but each one of these that does not fertilize, it leaves a scar tissue inside of the woman. Can you imagine 400,000 eggs leaving scar tissue inside the body? A woman should be just a mass of scar tissue. But she's not. Why? Because there is an enzyme that the body produces that if that egg is not fertilized, will dissolve that. It dissolves the scar tissue. Doctors would love to know how this is done, but you know we can't do this today, but by some accident, the body just knows how to get rid of the scar tissue. That egg, where is it fertilized? It's fertilized inside that oviduct. It goes from that uterus, the catcher's glove catches it, and then it starts moving down through the oviducts towards the uterus there. Now, contrary to popular belief, sperm do not swim. We always think, we see in the movies and whatnot, look at the baby talking movie, whatever that was, these, sperm are swimming up to get to the egg. That's not how it works. As a matter of fact, the egg is being pushed by muscles down that oviduct. At the same time, the sperm has to get to the egg, but yet that's like going against the flow. The muscles are pushing it, so how does that sperm go against the flow of the muscles pushing the egg through the oviduct there? Well, it's very simple, because there are these cilia that are lining that oviduct. They're just tiny little microscopic hairs, so small that a microscope can't even pick up just one of them. I mean, that's, you can see on the top, there's hundreds of them, and that's a microscopic view. But it's kind of like that, I don't know if they call it the mosh pit or whatever, when people jump in and they're getting moved along by hands. That's what happens, and that's how the sperm gets to the egg. Not by swimming, but by all these little hands carrying it to meet the egg. There's 3 basic steps here that we can see. Step number 1, phase 1 they're calling up here. When that sperm meets the egg, amazing things have to happen in order for you to be here. First of all, that sperm produces an enzyme that dissolves this outside cumulus shell on that egg. Otherwise, it couldn't get in there. But that sperm produces this enzyme. It starts to eat away that cumulus, and so it can get in towards that. But then there's a second wall that it has to get past here in phase 2. And a separate enzyme, completely different. By the way, you don't have any time to evolve a completely different enzyme here, do you? No, but it's already there. That enzyme then produces another thing to break down the barrier of that second wall. And then there's a third check process that has to take place in phase 3. And what happens there is the egg is going to check for the proper species. If it's not the right species, that egg are going to allow the sperm to get into the egg. This is why when the Bible says things reproduce after their own kind, that's what we see, is things only reproduce after their kind, because the egg makes sure only the right species lets that sperm in. It's a great design. Now, if it is the proper species, the egg opens up and it allows that sperm to get inside the egg, and immediately, as soon as that egg gets inside, or the sperm gets inside the egg, boom, there are some granules that explode, creating a hard case so that no other sperm can get into that egg. Good timing or God's timing that this happens. This is not an accident, folks. This is something that God had to create. We don't have millions of years of evolution to get these processes to take place. Everything had to be just right. And like I said, we're only scratching the surface of all the amazing things that have to go on in the order for birth to take place. Now, within the first 24 hours usually is when that egg is fertilized. 30 hours, we have this, double cells there. You can see it circled in red. Now, again, how does the egg continue to move through? We've got the muscles and things, but it would just spin. if it wasn't for the oviduct being lined with this sticky substance that allows it to move through there. Now, at 30 hours, when you have this two-celled child, I want you to understand something. That is what you looked like when you were 30 hours old. We often think, well, that's not a baby. No, that is a baby. That is what you looked like. We had a very similar appearance at a certain stage in life. You know, sometimes when you're a day old, some people think all babies, most babies look a lot alike, right? Well, yeah, we all look a lot alike at a certain point in our development. And so depending on our age, we look differently. Some of you here are 70, 80 years old. You look a lot different than you did when you were 12 or 13. And likewise, those of you who are 12 or 13 look a lot different than you do when you were like only 30 hours old. That is a baby. You can see up top here that first division. That is what you looked like at that stage. Now, actually, before I go on here, you can see then it moves down about 4.5 to 5 days. We get what is called this blastocyst. Now, technically, it's a blastocyst a little bit before that, but this is the early blastocyst stage. That's what you looked like at about 5 days old, circled there in blue. I know, not very pretty, but that is you. Now, that is a mass of cells that we're taught today. That's all it is, just a mass of cells. You get rid of that, no big deal. It's just like shedding some skin. No, that's you. That is a child. That's a life right there. Psalm 51:5 says, surely I was sinful at birth, sinful from the time my mother conceived me, which, by the way, is about 4 days prior to this. God knew you and loved you when you looked like that. You can see that that blastocyst, that mass of cells there, is separated by this other part. That is called the cytotrophoblast. Now, what that is that's going to become your placenta for the woman. And notice that it is kept separate. Why? Because if it wasn't, you wouldn't be here, and maybe mom wouldn't be here either. Because, you see, every individual baby can have an individual DNA, does have an individual DNA, an individual fingerprint, an individual blood type, and sometimes that blood type is poisonous to the mother. And so, it has to keep it separate, or else the mother could die, or you could die because it's a poison. So, that cytotrophoblast is amazing. That placental area it's kind of like being plugged in to an outlet. You're the stereo being plugged into the mother through that placenta. A chicken or a duck or something like that, it's more like a battery because they're not plugged into the mother, it's in the yolk. The yolk is the energy source. It's like a battery, but we're not like that. You can see here the placenta at 40 days. You can see the baby inside there. And it is a seamless separation between the two. And as I said, one of the reasons is to keep everything separate so that the mother's blood type doesn't contaminate the baby and the baby's blood type doesn't contaminate the mother, or death could ensue. Again, happy accident that this just happened to be separate? Not at all. And so you can see kind of outside all those little tree-like things there. That is basically the blood flow of the mother is going to go around that, and nutrients are captured from the mother's blood, taken then through the placenta, and then absorbed into the baby. One of the sad things is that in most things are kept away. You know, the blood type is kept separate, but there are certain things that can go through that placental wall, things like drugs and alcohol, which is why a mother, when she is pregnant, should not be smoking and drinking and doing drugs and things like that, because it does go through and it gets to the baby. Just as the nutrients would get to the baby, so do those things as well. But one cannot remove any of these enzymes. One can't remove any of these parts of this thing being separate or being able to get nutrients through the placental wall without death ensuing. Again, this is an amazing process of birth. Psalm 139 says, "My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place," the womb. When I was woven together, we talked about how that's literal. In the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. Indeed, God's eyes are upon every birth and every abortion before birth.